Well, thank you for joining us. This is Taria. I use she, her pronouns, and we're excited to be presenting at DrupalCon Europe. I'm the electric vehicle project manager, project director at Grid Alternatives, and we'll be presenting on design with empathy and agility to create equitable products.
And my name is Joel. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a product director at Blue State, and I'm based out of Brooklyn, New York. So today I want to start off with a 1967 quote from a programmer called Melvin Conway that is very much relevant today. And it's called Conways Law. And it says, any organization that designs a system will produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's structure. In other words, this law says that if an organization designs a piece of software, the structure of the software will mirror the structure of the organization. And we see this play out often in modern software, as shown on this slide. A company made up of small distributed teams will usually have a preference for modular, service-oriented architectures, while companies with large co-located teams tend towards building monolithic architectures. As designers, developers, architects, we are asked to solve our users' problems. And we like to imagine that our solutions are logical and impersonal, and that they reflect the needs of the users we are serving. But in fact, more often than not, we bring our own biases into the problem-solving process. And as described in Conway's Law, the things that we create are frequently a reflection of our own image and not of the needs of our users. And it's difficult to see or quantify the human influences in the systems or software that we build. But if we look at this law from a wider lens, you start seeing the larger implications of it. If the systems that we build are often a reflection of ourselves, a system built by a society with a history of sexism will tend towards solutions that reinforce sexism. And a system built by a society with a history of racism will tend towards solutions that reinforce racism. In this session, we'll discuss our three-pronged approach to breaking Conway's Law and ensuring that the system or software that we build actually reflects the communities that we are serving and avoids reinforcing systems of oppression that have historically harmed these communities. We'll also discuss how we built AccessCleanCalifornia, a Drupal tool that helps low-income Californians find and apply for clean energy incentives.
So what is AccessCleanCalifornia? AccessCleanCalifornia is a pilot project out of the California Air Resources Board that seeks to create greater access, like Joel said, to the state's myriad of clean transportation programs that exist now and are about to launch soon. Our target audience is communities that have the greatest burden from pollution. I can sit here and talk about it all day, but we have this great video of a recent applicant named Erica who'll tell you a little bit more about her story.
I don't spend any money on gas. I have not been to a gas station since I bought my car a year ago. Hallelujah. I cannot tell you how freeing that is. My name is Erica Williams, and I live in Pomona, California. I commute to LA every day. I've probably spent anywhere from $250 to $300 a month on gas, and that's no longer an expense I have. I pull into my driveway and I plug my car in. How easy is that? Once I drove my first EV, there was no looking back. I never thought about a gas-powered car again. I just felt kind of free, like I was flying or something. Actually, I was not going to look at them. They weren't affordable in my head. Once I started educating myself, I started finding out about all the incentives that are out there. Then I started seeing maybe I can do this, you know? So it was all about the incentives. Yes, it is possible right now for you to get into an electric vehicle. I bought my car in September of last year, and by December, I had solar panels installed. So I now have solar on my roof, charging system. I have my electric vehicle. I just checked my electric bill. Even with the super dry summer that we had, I had a credit in those months, and I'm charging my car. So it makes sense. If you're in the market for a car, you need to look at electric vehicles. You just can't afford not to at this point.
So, and Erica's story really exemplifies what we're trying to do, which is give folks like Erica and communities like Pomona, which is in Los Angeles, a sub-city of Los Angeles in Southern California, the ability to not just get electric vehicles, but also get solar and be able to power their transportation with the sun. But just a little bit about California. I mean, we're probably one of the most ambitious states in the union in terms of trying to reduce carbon emissions from transportation. We have these really lofty goals, at least for California, to get 5 million electric vehicles on the road by the end of this decade. And then Governor Newsom in the last couple months put even more goals on the table by trying to transition new car sales to electric vehicles as well. And as of last month, we had close to 750,000 EVs registered in California, and that's battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. But really the question that my project is trying to answer is, like, can we scale this equitably? And we're doing our best. The median income in California is $71,000, which sounds like a lot actually, but when you adjust for cost of living, California is probably one of the most expensive places to live in the country. We actually have the second highest poverty rate in the United States, behind Washington, D.C. at 18.2%. And then you add on top of that the average cost of an new electric vehicle is about $55,000 versus an internal combustion engine vehicle, a regular gas-powered vehicle, being about $36,000. So we're seeing a $20,000 difference, and that's on new vehicles. It's much greater actually when you start looking at pre-owned vehicles. And we did some investigation of DMV records, and we also saw that the majority of registered electric vehicles in California are Teslas, Audis, Porsches, Jaguars, and Mercedes-Benz. So definitely the luxury side. So when we think about the communities that we're trying to serve and the burden that they have, it's kind of ironic that these communities are the least likely to take advantage of these new technologies, because they bear the brunt of the burden of having carbon emitting vehicles on the road. We know that communities have greater rates of asthma. We know that the gas burden, if you've heard of the rent burden, we have a gas burden that's sometimes higher than folks' rent burden. And then on top of that, like I said, it's ironic that the early adopters of these technologies aren't the communities, the folks in the communities that are bearing the brunt of it. So we asked the question again, why, on our project. We said, why do we need to scale equitably? Low-income communities hold the burden. Well, why do low-income communities hold the burden of being surrounded by the most polluting industries and freeways? So CalEnviroscreen is a screening tool that California uses, and now other states are adopting, to recognize the communities and identify the communities that are bearing the brunt of pollution from transportation and other industries. This map not only shows across the state where pollution is concentrated, but if you have a little bit more historical context, you'll actually see that this is just these maps are just revealing the symptoms of housing and planning policies from about a century ago. But let me explain that a little bit more. So if you've heard of redlining, please drop your thoughts and drop what you know in the chat, because I love to hear what folks, especially folks outside of the country, know about redlining. But for those of you that haven't, redlining is an institutionalized and systemic practice of government working with realtors and banks to draw red lines around communities that were inhabited by Black, Latin, and Asian community members, and basically deny them a loan to buy a home or deny them a loan to start a business. So the colors on the map basically mean, green is best, blue is desirable, yellow is declining, and red is hazardous. And it signifies the level of risk of lending money to that part of a city. The primary indicator of risk was race, and this is auditor's notes from Oakland, California, and what you were just seeing was the redlining map of Oakland, Berkeley, and Alameda in the Bay Area of California. And you see that the detrimental influences are the infiltration of Negroes and Orientals, so language in the 30s that we don't use today, but it really shows that risk was measured by someone's ethnicity and race. And these maps didn't just go into loan lending, but it also informed planning and zoning practices. So on top of not being able to own a home or start a business, you also have planning departments saying, we're going to zone all of our industry in these red line districts. So when you look at CalEnviroscreen and you see a screenshot of that with its redlining map, you see the same areas that were historically redlined are actually the areas that are in red. So as I designed this project for the last 2 years, we have to, I continuously bring into the conversation that we have to take this into account to all of our decision making as we work with these communities that have been facing these barriers and forms of systemic oppression, not just recently, but over the last decade as our communities and as our country was built. So I've gone through a lot of context, but really in summary, our project, Access Clean California, has been given this incredible task of not just thinking about how we scale the number of electric vehicles on the road, but how do we do it equitably? And I knew that we needed an innovative approach to the website, but also one that was intentionally inclusive. And we needed a team that was able to think at the intersection of not just technology, but also technology and the history of transportation in our communities. So Grid and Blue State have been working together since 2019. And when we approached the team, we said we want folks that are able to think like this and think in these intersections. And we wanted to make sure that we were addressing the system of transportation overall, not just what we had been granted to do. And Blue State's response was, they came with not only the expertise of knowing how to build a beautiful website and a quality experience for our users, but also the ability to come to the table and have some of these uncomfortable conversations, and also holds both Grid and themselves accountable to deepening our commitments to equity and justice through our work together and through other forms of work that Blue State was doing.
So it was clear, based on everything that Teria just eloquently explained, that the system wasn't working for those who needed it the most. And Access Clean California gave us an opportunity to not only rethink the solutions, but also rethink the process used to land on some of these solutions. So we adopted a three-pronged approach to this project, where we focused on three things: diversity, experimentation, and equity. On the diversity front, we knew that those closest to the problem are best equipped to develop solutions for it. So we put together a very diverse team, as diverse as the communities that we were serving. And diversity was baked into everything that we did, down to the contract between Grid and Blue State. And it was critical for the success of this project. It helped us connect with the audiences we were serving. It provided different perspectives when interpreting results from user testing. It helped us understand our users, even in the different languages that we were trying to reach them in. And since, as described in Conways Law, the systems that we create are often a reflection of ourselves, it was only natural that the team working on the website would be a reflection of the users that would be using it. And we didn't just stop at setting up a diverse team. We used experimentation to ensure that our designs were user-centric and that our assumptions weren't dictating the solutions. So we leveraged design thinking, a structured process for problem solving that focuses on the user. And you can see the typical steps of design thinking in this slide. And it follows a number of steps, starting with empathy, with the goal of understanding what problems the users are facing. And the next steps are where experimentation comes in. We developed rapid prototypes to put in front of the communities that we were serving, to incorporate their voices in the designs. These communities had deep-rooted distrust of government, so we work with outreach partners that had already built trust in those communities and administered a lot of these user tests for us and ensured that we got reliable results in the end. Each prototype that you can see in the screen was treated as just an idea, not a solution, and ultimately the data from these tests would determine the direction that we took. Experimentation ensured that we stayed objective and used evidence and not our opinions when making design decisions. And finally, in order to disrupt systemic inequities, we needed to view this project through the lens of equity. And that focus on equity started with how we interacted with each other, and particularly the workplace culture. We created 6 working agreements, which you can see on this slide. These are a set of communication practices that help address some of the systemic issues that we've commonly seen in our society, and ensured that equity and inclusion were at the forefront of how we communicate and collaborate with each other. And our focus on equity obviously didn't stop at how we interacted with each other, but also how we connected with our users. We took another look at design thinking and found a growing movement around equity-centered design, a twist on design thinking. Equity-centered design adds a step before you can empathize with the audience, and that's to notice and reflect. This step is not only about the users, and it's actually not about the users, it's about the designers and problem solvers. It will ask a designer or problem solver to develop an awareness of their own identity, values, emotions, biases, and assumptions, and then reflect on how these factors may have an impact on the process or the product that's being built. Even with a diverse team and using experimentation to guide us, we knew that developing self-awareness was critical for the designs to be truly about our users and not about ourselves.
So how does all of this intentionality play out within our work together? Recently, we had a really big win on the project when we started to build our income verification process. So on our tool, on the benefits finder, when you go to the website, not only can you learn what you may be eligible for and then start that application, we also wanted to create an income verification process to make it really easy for folks to gain even more access, even quicker, to all the programs that they're eligible for. Through Blue State's leadership and research on current income verification processes that the incentive programs use, we actually found out that the process was centered around individuals that try to cheat the system. And we found that only 1% of applications that actually go through or are submitted to the income verification process for incentive programs are ones that are trying to cheat the system, deemed as trying to cheat the system. So with this information and thinking about the system holistically, the system of income verification, I propose that we take an approach that gives applicants of these programs the benefit of the doubt as they reported their income to qualify for these programs. I asked the question, why do we ask people to prove that they're poor over and over and over again to get services and resources that they clearly need? With the proposed approach, which thankfully was approved by the California Air Resources Board, I didn't think it would be because it's a little radical. We aren't just giving applicants boxes, as you see in this equity visualization. We're actually addressing the fence, which is getting closer to justice, looking at the system and saying, why are we recreating another system just because it's been around for a while? And by addressing the system and addressing the fence, we're able to hopefully get rid of the entire fence and really get folks into these programs and into these technologies that will help them, not only help them save money, but help save lives and continue to address climate change, which really is the fight of our generation.
So with this project, we set out to disrupt systemic inequities around transportation and clean energy. And we realized that the system wasn't working for those communities that have been unfairly impacted. So we did something different in the way that we put together teams, reached solutions, and how we ensured that equity was at the center of everything that we did. We tend to focus on the solutions that we build and forget that we bring a lot of ourselves into how we work and the work that we do. And so we urge you to take a step back and take a look at who is building and how they're approaching a project, and understand that process is also the product. And only by rethinking the process can we really make a change. Thank you very much for joining our presentation. Feel free to drop in some questions into the live Q&A and the session.
Thank you. I mean, we still have 10 folks, so if you don't have questions, you can, drop in where you're joining in from, or just share your thoughts. We love to hear thoughts. How can we follow your project? Yes, so you can go to, I'll drop the link into the chat as well, AccessCleanCalifornia.org. And yeah, there's more information. That's the site that Blue State has helped us build. And unfortunately, the benefits finder is still specifically for California and specifically for kind of a closed ecosystem. But you can definitely see what we've created and learn more. We give it one more minute if there are any other questions. Thanks for joining us, David. Great. Well, Joel, do you want to stay on a little bit longer? Or?
No, I think if there's no other questions, I think we can end the session.
Okay. Make sure there's no other questions. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and it's been a great experience, and have a great rest of your time at the conference.